talking to this crowd as well
as whoever's online. Right.
But it'll also be recorded and viewed later.
That's good.
If I were to go by previous years, the total audience will wind up being 50 or 70.
That's fine.
But over time.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Dorsey. I'm licensed in the U.S. as K1MMB and in Mali as Tango Zulu 4 Alpha Mike, TZ4AM. But everything started right here in New England a long time ago. And this is where it started in Belmont, Massachusetts. That's where I grew up. There were more trees back then, and we had antennas in all of them. And the person that helped me put a lot of the antennas up is sitting right there. His name is Fred Hopengarten, K1VR. And we climbed every tree in my place and his place. So I was licensed as K1MMB in 1957 and was active as K1MMB and K1MMB up until 1961 when I went away to college. I worked mostly on CW and mostly at the bottom end of 40 meters. I was fortunate enough in one way to have a very good Elmer, Marshall Goldberg, K1LUV, but in another way, I never learned how to fix things because it was so much easier. He'd just say, give that to me and it would be done. And K1VR, Fred Hopengarten, was there to help me with the antennas and many other things. On 40 meters, he and I put up a reversible Yagi where you pulled up the various elements and let them down. And that way I'd occasionally work VKs in the evening, and then I'd change the antenna and I'd work them the same VK the next morning in the other direction. And that was on 40 meters when I was 13 years old, and it was fun, and it still is fun. There were also an assortment of other kinds of dipoles. I got ARL code certificates up to 30 words per minute, and I could understand code much faster than that, but I couldn't write any faster. And my father pulled down a portable typewriter from that he'd done his MD degree on. And he said, you know, the J is here and the other base key is there. And that was my typing lesson. But in any case, I never got any higher ARL certificates, but I did learn how to type, and that stood me in good stead all these years. So that continued all through high school up until 1961 when I graduated in Belmont Hill School, which today is having their 100th reunion. So I go from here to the 100th anniversary of my high school. But I went away to college at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York. The hat is sitting over there on top of my jacket. And I came home one weekend to find my brother in my room, my radio transmitters in a dank basement, all the antennas cut down. And instead of doing what I should have done, which is to put up a dipole and start again, I left amateur radio for a long time. In fact, there was a 54-year hiatus between the time that I operated as K1MMB and the time I got back and started operating basically as Tango Zulu 4 Alpha Mike. During the meantime, I went into the Peace Corps in Chile. I spent 4 years in the Peace Corps. I learned how to fly Cessnas and Pipers. I went on to graduate school and studied economics and did international consulting and development for many, many years and still do. I spent a lot of time biking and occasionally would ride a couple of 100 kilometers in a day. I learned 5 languages, which is turning out to be very nice in the pileups. I met many interesting people. I worked in 50 different countries. And I got into Mali in West Africa. Mali is like Bolivia. It's a landlocked country that has no seacoast. I got there in 2009 for an assignment. I found the people to be just wonderful and the opportunities to be almost limitless. And so I decided to stay there. But there was something that was missing. And what was missing was amateur radio. Because the whole time I was growing up, my house was full of people. and almost all of them were amateur radio operators. And over the years, I made many friends biking, through my work, and through social relations in different countries. But I missed the camaraderie from amateur radio. So my father had the misfortune to die in 2011, but the people at the Boston Globe were nice enough to write a nice big obituary, and Fred saw it. And through that, he got back in touch with me. We hadn't been in touch for half a century, and it was like time had never ceased to pass. So he said a couple of things. He said, it's time to get back on the air, which was certainly true. And he says, your call sign is free again. Someone else had my call sign. Even though I wasn't operating, I'd occasionally check, and somebody else had the call sign, and it was free. And he said, no one has been operating in Mali for 2 years. You would be very, very popular. So that more or less convinced me that I should do it. And with my usual speed, it took me 4 years before I actually went to get the licenses back. So starting in January of 2015, there was a convention like this in Miami, and I went in and I took my tech and I passed it. I later passed the general, and then with a little bit more effort, I managed to pass the amateur extra class on the 3rd try. And I did get my old call back, and I did get a chance to work in Mali. They have the CEPT facility that allows them to authorize based on American licenses. And I convinced them that in spite of the fact that they were in the middle of the war, that they didn't have too much to fear from an American. And so they gave me the license. So where is Mali? Mali is, as I say, a landlocked country in West Africa. It touches on so many other countries, which is why the rebellion and the jihadis who are fighting the government there now are causing so much trouble, because they started in Mali and they've now spread all over West Africa. But from an amateur radio standpoint, if you look at this map, it shows something very interesting. Which part of the United States is showing up? New England. What does that mean? It means that the people calling me from New England are about 1 S unit higher than the ones calling from, say, Chicago or Miami or someplace like that. So New England is right next to Mali, basically in amateur radio parlances. I live in the capital city of Bamako. Bamako is a city of about 1 million people, sprawling, spread out all over the place. And I have the good fortune to be living right next to some very quiet neighbors. You can see the red arrow that's pointing towards the southern tip of the cemetery of Lafiabougou. And you'll be able to see in the next slide the actual house with the solar panels and everything on it. My previous QTH from 2015 to 2019 is shown by the yellow arrow. As you can see, there's only about 200 meters distance between the two. So the move was fairly easy. The house with the solar panels on it, that's the one that I live in. We have the 2nd floor and the entire exclusive use of the roof. And the solar panels take up about 1/3 or the half of the roof. And you can see some lines there, perhaps. If we had a pointer, you see that line that's going over the solar panels. That's a WeMo E antenna 59 plus log Yagi. And the other line you see over there is a WeMo E antenna 50LF10. It's a 10-element Yagi for 6 meters. And you don't really see it there, but under it there's a homebrew 30-meter full-size Yagi that K9RX Gary was kind enough to design for us, and makes working on 30 meters a lot of fun. Right here on the corner, you can maybe see something sticking up. That's a piece of bamboo. We go to the forest and get bamboo, and it's 11 meters long. 11 meters is like 35 feet. So it's big, long pieces of bamboo. We have 1 or 2 of them, and then we feed down to that feed point right at the corner of the cemetery, and we make a vertical for 80 meters and an inverted L for 160. Then we have, going up this the cemetery wall, we paid the municipality $200 forever to be able to put up beverages there. So we have a beverage going towards Europe this way, and another one headed towards North America the other way. If we could figure out how to reverse them, it would be very, very nice. And on the right, let's see if we can see the next one. The next one, this is a picture of the house. This shows you the bamboos that are feeding the 160 and 80 meter antennas. And this is the only place in in Bamako that's covered with tiles. The guy sells tiles, and he decided to face the building with tiles, which traps the water inside, so you can imagine what the inside of the apartments looks like in the rainy season. In any case, it's a wonderful place. The landlord is nice to get along with. The previous one was not. The 10 elements beam for 6 meters overlaps the building on one side and on the other side, and the landlord thought it brought lightning. So that caused a lot of problems. In any case, it's a very, very nice location with one small exception. It's pretty noisy because, as you've seen, it's right in the middle of the city, and except for the people next door in the cemetery, all of them have flat screen TVs and make a lot of noise.
Mitch is asking you to go back one slide and translate the label on the building.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, the label on the building says sanitaires. That means like toilet bowls. And then the other one says carreaux, that's tiles. And the one below that says furniture. They're in French. The language of the country is French and a number of local languages.
They sell all that downstairs.
Say that?
They sell all that.
They sell all that downstairs, right.
Are you crossing the road there too?
Well, there's a little teeny tiny alleyway that I have to cross to get to my antennas. But the main road, I haven't dared put an antenna across yet, but I keep thinking I might. So, okay. So, on the roof, I have, you saw the solar panels. I have 32 solar panels. I didn't do that for fun. I did it because there are power cuts, one, and the electric rates are 3 times what they are here in the United States. And so if you want to operate and be able to chase DX like I like to do, you need to be available 24/7, and so you need to have solar power. On the roof, you saw on one side the 9-meter tower for the 30 and the 6-meter beam, and a 12-meter tower for the log Yagi. There's also bamboo mast for a 40-meter dipole, and the mast for the 80 and 160-meter antennas. And the beverages are pointed in the right directions for North America and Europe. I started out with an ICOM 718 and a G5RV, and the G5RV was so low that I had to duck to get under the antenna. Little by little, that changed. I put up a hex beam on a small tower, and Chip W1YW, a friend of Fred's and mine, loaned me an Alpha 76A amplifier, and shortly after that I bought a KPA 1500. And so I think we've already talked about the beverages, so let's go on. So in addition to the transmitters and the antennas for myself, we also have some things that help people see whether Mali is really within the range of their stations. The first thing that happened was that Pete K4ZR contacted me and said he'd give me a reverse beacon provided I'd make sure that it got up and worked. There's a German operator called Ulmar Schmidt, DK1CE, TZ4AM. He asked if he could come and operate, and I said sure. And so he provided a computer. So between the computer, which he had one of his techies in Germany set up, and the reverse beacon transmitter, we have the reverse beacon on there. It's quite helpful for seeing whether Mali's available on the HF bands. However, on 6 meters, it doesn't work very well. So W4LHR, I think I have that wrong. I think it's HLR. His name is Howard, and he does a lot of work with meteor scatter. He saw me operating, and he said, you need a beacon for 6 meters, and I'll send you one. And he did. And we just got it on the air about a month ago on 5006.2, and it's just got a dipole, but it does have 50 watts, which is fairly strong for a beacon. And we're going to put up a Yagi pointing towards America, because the people in Europe I can work almost every day, but the ones here in America are quite a lot harder. So in any case, we have that working. Someone complained that we were on a frequency that was assigned to the Integrated Synchronized Beacon Project, and Omar, the German I told you about, he talked to them in German and calmed them down. So we're able to stay on the air, and we should soon be able to make contact here with North America. My operations have been on 160 and now are mostly 80 through 6 meters. 160 I've had to abandon pretty much because of noise. There's a lot of noise. I do mostly CW, but I do work on phone, mostly de-expedition style, no dupes if possible. FT8 I haven't worked very much. I have 88 countries on 6 meters, and I'm hoping to get to 100 before I start FT8. Noise is a serious limitation on operations from 160, even 80 meters, and even on other bands, 15, 10, it'll be S3, and so the weak stations that I would otherwise be able to copy, I can't.
Where's the noise from?
Say that again?
Where's the noise from?
That's what we'd like to find out. And, you know, I'm not very technical, and the technical people that we've had before, we'll go into that later, are no longer there.
You get the noise when the power is off?
We get noise all the time. When our solar is off, yes, we still get the noise. So we think it's coming from people's flat screen TVs and maybe some other solar systems that are in the neighborhood. But ours is, we get it at night, yes, we get it very, yeah, well, we need to determine what it is. Once we determine what it is, we have $2,000. I told Zorro, Zorro's a big DXer from Japan who died about a year ago. And I told him about it. He sent me $2,000. And he says, you know, you figure out what the noise is and you just, you know, buy whatever is necessary to get rid of it. So anybody that can help figure out what it is, we'd be very glad to get rid of it and then get back on 160 and do work better with other one. Has anyone here worked TZ4AM? Yeah, all right. Some of the people in the front row have, but it's easy. You saw from the map, New England, we're neighbors. I mean, it's almost like Italy, almost like Spain. It's very easy. Even I've worked people from New England with 25, 50 watts. So if you ever try and finding it difficult, just get away from the pileup frequencies, get higher or lower, and chances are I'll hear you. And on phone, the same thing. If I say up 5 to 10, I don't mean just up 5, and I don't mean just up 10. I mean something in between. So it's very easy to work. And plus, I'm listening for weak signals because I'm still running up totals on DXCC. On the challenge, I have 2,000 as of about a month ago, and about 280 countries, entities worked total. So I'm listening for weak signals. In Mali, I work in international development consulting. I also represent radio companies there. I've represented the U.S.'s largest military radio company. I now represent their largest civilian radio and TV transmitter company. And Mali has real possibilities in spite of all the political difficulties and the civil war and everything, because they've recently tossed out the French. Now, the French, as you may know, were their former colonial power, not just of Mali, but of most of West Africa. And so every major contract somehow would go to the French companies. Now that's no longer the case. Now there's a better chance for other companies to come in, and so I'm hoping that some U.S. companies will start taking advantages. The security situation, however, is bad, and it's getting worse. There's a town that you may have heard of. You may not have heard of Bamako, but you have heard of Timbuktu, which is in Mali. It's farther up. We're going to have a map. In that map where it says Mali, Timbuktu would be under the M of Mali, so it's sort of center north. So the question is how much longer I'm going to stay in Mali given the conditions, and that is really a $64,000 question, because things are looking very, very bad. In addition to having Timbuktu under siege, nothing goes in, nothing comes out. They've overrun within the past 2 weeks 5 army camps, and some of the most recent attacks have been within 35 miles of Bamako, of the capital city. So I'll be watching the security situation, and like any good economist, I make assumptions, and then based on the assumptions, I decide what to do. I'm sure you know economists make assumptions about everything. There was a farmer and an economist that were walking through a big field of high grass. All of a sudden they fall down into a well. Fortunately, it was dry. So they dust themselves off, no broken bones, and the farmer starts complaining and crying, "Oh, we're going to die of thirst, we're going to die of hunger, no one will ever find us." And the economist doesn't worry about that. He says, "My friend, assume we have a ladder." So I'm assuming that the situation is going to stay the same. And so based on what actually happens is how long I'm going to stay there. My new projects, we brought in, I think I told you I have a log Yagi for the high frequency bands from 20 to 10 meters. But I bought an Optibeam 16.5, which if you've ever seen pictures of it is much more complex than I had any idea before I bought it. And I've been told that it will take 3 weeks to put together, but I was told that by my friend Omar, who's an engineer, and he had a troop of engineering students to help him do that. So I'm wondering how me, with people who have trouble measuring a dipole, are going to be able, but we'll figure it out. So that's like a 4-element beam on 20 through 12, and it's like an 8-element beam on 10. So that's going to make a big difference, and maybe that'll overcome some of the noise problems on the other bands. Next problem is elimination of noise. As I say, that's the major impediment to working weak signals here. And the second thing that we want to do is to put up a separate beacon for 6 meters. We have the one beacon now, and that's basically for Europe. I'd like to put up a second beacon and a Yagi pointed at America so we can take advantage of every opening to America. This year I've only worked 2 North America stations on 6 meters because there simply haven't been the openings that I could find. With a beacon, it'll be easier to find. I also want to make the beverages, which are now one way. In other words, it's straight Europe or straight North America. Occasionally, when there's a de-expedition on that's in Africa, we disconnect and we run coax down to the other end and we reverse it towards Africa. But anyway, that's another project. Also, there is no prime in Mali. There's no overnight. So you don't have it, you just don't have it. So I'd like to have everything backed up. I have a K3S and a KPA 1500 as the main equipment for the radio. I would like to have a second K3S and a second KPA 1500 just in case. And who knows, maybe somebody will want to come over and do a contest and be nice enough to bring some of those things. My dream is to replace the 30-meter Yagi that I have with a Optibeam 3010, which is a slightly reduced size 3-element Yagi for 30 and 40 meters. And if I could do that, I would be most pleased. Problems of working amateur radio in Africa. The electricity, as I think I mentioned, is 3 times as expensive as it is here. So often I'll get on with high power until people start finding me, and then I'll reduce the power to 400 watts or something like that to work the pileup. The fact that you can't get things, which means like today, we've been walking around here trying to find the various connectors and things that we know we don't have, and simple things like insulators. We are now doing dipoles with pieces of wood that we've snipped and made 2 holes in, and those are our insulators because in the dry season it works fine, and we're going into the dry season now, and we don't have any more insulators, and we can't get them. Masts, we don't have any trees around there. It's very dry. The trees don't grow very much except for the bamboo. So we actually go to the forest. We mark this bamboo we want, not that one, this one, this one. They cut it, they dry it a little bit, and then we bring it back on top of buses in the middle of the night so the police don't harass us for blocking the road. We have other problems. The heat. Everything that produces heat produces heat in spades in Africa because it's already so hot. So we have a fan blowing behind the amplifier and the K3, and then we have other fans blowing on the solar system to blow away the heat from the converter and the rest of the system. So we also have problems with rodents. We had a very nice TW500A amplifier, broadband amplifier back from the 1970s, 1980s We had 3 of them. And one of them we left out and we were going to put it in someplace. We came back and found a mouse dead inside, and it had died and did damage to the amplifier. So anyway, it's not an easy place to work in. They have a local authority like the FCC called the AMRTP, and for the most part they are responsive on getting licenses, but not always. Sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the times it takes about a month. We've had a lot of help in the past from Dennis Castor's F8DAK, but unfortunately he went back to France about a year ago, and he never came back, and he died. And then there was another Frenchman called Laurent Migliorini, and he went back to France, and he's not coming back to Mali. So we basically don't have any technical support. And me, I'm an operator, and I've always depended on other people for the technical support. So if anyone wants to come to Mali and can give me about a month's warning, we can probably get you a license. If you want to come for a contest or a de-expedition, maybe you like to work FT8, which I haven't worked very much, or maybe you like to work phone, you'd be most welcome. We got a little guest room that's right next to the Radio Shack. You can work day and night, and I have plenty of other things that I need to be doing.
Is it air conditioned?
Say that again?
Is it air conditioned?
It is air conditioned. Yeah. Remember, you'll be paying 3 times the electric rates that you would in America. You won't pay for the room, but the electricity you will pay for. Single operator can be accommodated in teams. We'd have to put up someplace else. Customs can be a hassle, but we have a good system. We have a Malian who lives in Philadelphia, and you ship things through them. You put your name and your telephone number, and they miraculously appear in Bamako 1 to 2 months later with everything there and a very modest fee for the transport. So we don't have to deal with customs. Security is bad, as I told you, but it's not as bad as the State Department says. In Bamako, I feel safe, but it's like any big city. You don't want to be running around the streets at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But inside busily working a pileup, you'll be perfectly safe, in my opinion. So when I'm not in Mali, where am I? I'm in Miami, because I lived in Rome, which was perfectly lovely for about 13 years. And at a certain point, I had to come back to the States. I didn't even look. I'd grown up in the Boston area. I think you've seen a little snow around here. I went to school in upstate New York, where there's plenty of snow. And I went to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where there's less snow, but it's colder than anything. And so I went straight to Miami. So I live in Miami. In a lot of ways, it's similar to Mali. There's corruption in Mali and there's corruption in Miami. The only real difference is the corruption in Miami is in Spanish and English, and in Mali, it's in French. There are certain difficulties in Miami. There's a limitation of 40 feet on towers, but fortunately we have someone right here who knows how to work around those limitations with the city councils. The seasons are exactly the same. The rainy season in Mali is the same as the rainy season in Miami. The dry season, the same thing. And, another part that's also is that they're very, very nice people in both Mali and the United States. When I get into amateur radio, the reason I have an ICOM 718 is because someone heard me after a meeting saying that I didn't have any equipment. He came up, he said, I got some old radios, come over and get them. And then he came to my house and gave me a 10-minute briefing on how to run it, and boom, I was in business. And back in Mali, I knew Morse code. I thought I'd be in business, 20 words a minute, working pileups. And I found out it wasn't 20, that after 50 years it was down to less than 13, and trying to answer 200 stations at the same time was a bit more than I could handle. But in any case, that's what it looks like in Miami. And, it's a nice place, but as you can see, there's no towers and no antennas, and I intend to do something about that. So, what's the real conclusion of this? That amateur radio is a great hobby, and that I'm so glad that I've gotten back in, and even if I wasted 50 years, I've got a few more years ahead of me, and the time that I've been back in since 2015 has been most enjoyable. When I was growing up, the house was full of amateur radio operators coming to see me, and now where I am now, I'm in constant contact either personally or by email, Skype, and WhatsApp with people who are helpful. People I told you show up to be QSL managers, to provide equipment, to provide technical assistance when things couldn't work. And it's just a wonderful hobby where people help each other out. It's just wonderful. So I'm so pleased that that I can be back in and be back with so many nice people. So thank you all, and hope to hear you on the bands, and if you're so inclined, over in Mali. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
How long are you in Miami versus Mali?
Good question. It varies. Some years I've been in Miami as much as 4 or 5 months in the year. COVID hit, and I spent 2 solid years without coming back because there was much less COVID in Mali because everything's out in the open. You saw those solar panels. They're not down on the ground. They're way up high, and instead of holding meetings in closed rooms like this, we held the meetings under the panel where the wind could blow any virus away. So now, this year, this is my first trip back in a year. So I spend most of my time in Mali.
Are any other hams in Mali?
Okay, there's someone who had his license and let it expire, but he still stays interested in amateur radio. His name is Hamadoun Yatara. He's the one who's keeping the first beacon that's there, and he brought his license for us to look at, and it was expired in 1988. So I kidded him and told him that it was going to cost him between 1988 and now the equivalent of $60 a year. And he's black, and he almost turned white when I told him. But I think they'll negotiate something. There's another guy called Mohammed Al-Fadi who just showed up at my house, and he said he wanted a license. I helped him get the license, and he said he needed a radio, so I gave him a radio that someone had given me, obviously, and I gave him one of those 500-watt, 400-watt amplifiers, and he's busy, having fun on 20 meters in French because he doesn't speak English. So, and there's still hope of getting other people in, but it's difficult because, like anywhere, people are busy all the time, and the young people have their phones and the internet, and they just can't be bothered. But we keep trying to bring in new people. Yes?
Do you have to have security for your house?
Security for the house. We have a locked gate downstairs. I try and convince my staff to lock the door to we have 2 facing apartments, one of them for my residents, the other for, but that door, in Mali, people just leave the doors open. There's also mosquitoes and flies, and we have screening. I have trouble teaching the people to be careful about that because people just are creatures of habit, and they've always been used to everything being so open and easy. And now things are changing. It's very, very, very hard. In terms of my own security, we don't have a guard or anything like that. What we do is we have a balcony, and for the people to get in the gate downstairs, we go to the balcony, check if it's somebody we know, we throw them the key, they open it up, and then they relock as we're coming up. I don't go out at night very much. Usually at night I'm too busy on amateur radio, and so that kind of security is okay. Should the jihadis and the rebels come down and try to attack Bamako, which I think is unlikely for at least in the near future, we'll have to make a decision. But at the present, it's just the most danger is big city crime, and that's everywhere.
When my brother was in Haiti, they had dogs.
Dogs would be nice, but I travel. What do you do with dogs when you're not there all the time? It's difficult. So, but that's a thought. Yeah.
Are the people in Bamako, they're mostly black or Muslim or?
Well, they're black and Muslim mostly, but there's still some people who are animists who believe in the gods of the forest and the trees and the water and things like that. Up north, you have more Arabs, lighter-skinned people. The language spoken is French, but the government just because it broke with France, it promulgated a law that French is no longer the official language. So I'm trying to get people in the U.S. Embassy and the British Embassy, the Canadian Embassy, to push English, because if English were to increase, it would improve relations between countries like the United States and the UK and lessen the influence of France, which has been very negative for West Africa mostly. You can look at even if you're not an economist, you look at the growth rates and the levels of poverty, and they're much, it's much worse in the former French colonies than it is in the former British colonies.
Like that in Caribbean.
Pardon me?
Like that in the Caribbean also. The French colonies in the Caribbean are worse off than the British.
That's also true, yes, right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure.